Emily had worked the night shift at the hospital for almost 8 years now, and she thought she'd seen everything. Burns, broken bones, heart attacks at 3 in the morning, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to find on that cold October night. The clock on her dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when she pulled out of the hospital parking lot. Her feet ached, her back was stiff, and all she wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and fall into bed. The streets were mostly empty at this hour, just the occasional taxi or delivery truck passing by. She stopped at the red light near 5th Street, the one by the old warehouse district. Most of the buildings there had been abandoned for years, their windows boarded up, graffiti covering the walls. The city kept talking about redevelopment, but nothing ever seemed to happen. Emily usually didn't pay much attention to this part of town. She just wanted the light to turn green so she could get home. That's when she heard it. At first she thought it was a cat, a high-pitched cry that cut through the quiet night. But something about it made her pause. She rolled down her window and the sound became clearer. That wasn't a cat, that was a baby. Emily's heart started pounding. She looked around, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. The street was empty. No one else was around. The crying continued, weak and desperate, coming from somewhere in the darkness between 2 buildings. She should call the police. That would be the smart thing to do. But what if the baby was hurt? What if every second mattered? Emily had been a nurse long enough to know that sometimes you don't have time to wait. She pulled her car over to the curb and grabbed her phone, turning on the flashlight. The alley was dark and smelled like garbage and rain. Her hands were shaking as she walked toward the sound, her nurse's instincts fighting with her common sense that told her this could be dangerous. "Hello?" she called out. "Is someone there?" The crying got louder. Emily moved faster, her flashlight beam bouncing off the wet pavement and brick walls. And then she saw it, a cardboard box, the kind that might have once held a television or a microwave, sitting against the wall about 20 feet into the alley. The baby was inside. Emily ran the last few steps and dropped to her knees beside the box. The infant was tiny, wrapped in a thin pink blanket that was damp from the cold night air. The baby's face was red from crying, her little fists waving in the air. Emily's training kicked in immediately. She touched the baby's skin, too cold. The lips had a slight blue tint. This child had been out here for a while. "Oh my God," Emily whispered. "Oh my God, you're okay. I've got you." She pulled off her jacket without thinking and wrapped it around the baby, holding her close to share body heat. The infant was so small, probably only a few weeks old, maybe a month at most. Emily pulled out her phone with one hand while keeping the baby secure with the other. "911, what's your emergency? I found a baby, an abandoned baby in an alley near 5th and Morrison. She's cold and needs medical attention immediately." The dispatcher started asking questions, but Emily was barely listening. She was doing a quick assessment the way she'd been trained. The baby's breathing was okay. Heart rate seemed normal. No obvious injuries, but hypothermia was a real concern. How long had this little one been out here in the cold? "The ambulance is on the way. Stay on the line with me." Emily looked back at the box, trying to understand what kind of person would do this. That's when she noticed something tucked into the corner of the blanket. A piece of jewelry. She carefully pulled it out while keeping the baby warm against her chest. It was a locket, silver, old, with an intricate design etched into the surface. Even in the dim light from her phone, Emily could see letters engraved on the front, though she couldn't quite make them out. Her hands were shaking too much. Why would someone leave a locket with an abandoned baby? Was it meant to be a clue? A way for someone to identify the child later? Or maybe it was the only valuable thing the mother had, left behind as some kind of apology. The baby had stopped crying now, comforted by the warmth and the gentle rocking motion Emily was unconsciously making. Those tiny eyes looked up at her, so innocent and trusting. It broke Emily's heart. "Where's your mama?" Emily whispered. "Where is she, sweet girl?" In the distance, she could hear sirens. The ambulance was getting closer. Emily stood up, still holding the baby tight, and walked back toward the street where there was more light. She wanted to make sure they could see her right away. 2 paramedics jumped out as soon as the ambulance pulled up. Emily recognized one of them from the hospital. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I found her in the alley. She's cold, maybe hypothermic. Been out here for at least an hour, maybe more." The paramedics moved quickly, but Emily didn't want to let go. She'd only known this baby for maybe 10 minutes, but something had already shifted inside her. This wasn't just another emergency. This felt personal in a way she couldn't explain. "I'm coming with you," she said, climbing into the back of the ambulance before anyone could argue. At the hospital, everything became a blur of activity. Doctors, nurses, social workers. Everyone had questions. Where exactly did she find the baby? Was there anyone else around? Did she see a vehicle leaving the area? Emily answered everything as best as she could, but her mind kept going back to that moment in the alley. The fear she'd felt, the relief when she realized the baby was alive, and that locket, which was now in an evidence bag, being documented by a police officer. A detective arrived around 1 in the morning. She introduced herself as Linda Morrison, and she had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "You did a good thing tonight," Linda said. "This baby is lucky you were driving by." "Is she going to be okay?" "Doctors say she'll be fine. You got to her in time." "Another hour or two in that cold, though?" Linda didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, which was nearly empty at this hour, and Linda asked Emily to go through everything again. Every detail mattered in cases like this. They needed to find whoever had left this baby in that alley. "Tell me about the locket," Linda said. Emily described it as best as she could remember, silver, old-fashioned looking with initials engraved on it. Linda made notes, then looked up with an expression Emily couldn't quite read. "You know what's strange?" Linda said. "We had a case about 30 years ago. A locket matching that description was reported stolen from a woman in this same neighborhood." 30 years ago. "Yeah, the woman's name was Rosa Delgado." She filed the report, but then moved away. "We never recovered the locket." Emily felt a strange chill run down her spine. 30 years ago? That was right around the time she had been born. She'd been adopted as a baby, found abandoned in a hospital parking lot not far from here. Her adoptive parents had been wonderful, had given her a great life, but she'd always wondered about her birth family. Always wondered why someone had left her. "Can I see the baby?" Emily asked. "Before I go home?" Linda smiled. "I think that can be arranged." They walked together to the pediatric ward. Through the window of the nursery, Emily could see the tiny infant sleeping peacefully now, warm and safe. A nurse had dressed her in a hospital gown that was still too big, had cleaned her up and fed her. "What happens to her now?" Emily asked. "Child services will take over. They'll try to find family. If they can't, she'll go into foster care." Foster care. Emily knew what that system could be like. She'd been one of the lucky ones, adopted quickly by people who loved her. But not every child was that fortunate. "I want to know," Emily said quietly. "When you find out anything about her, about who left her there." "I want to know." Linda handed her a business card. "Call me anytime." "And Emily, go home and get some rest. You've had quite a night." But as Emily drove home in the early morning darkness, she knew sleep wouldn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that baby's face. She felt the weight of that small body in her arms. And she couldn't stop thinking about that locket, about a woman named Rosa Delgado, and about connections that seemed too strange to be coincidence. Something had started tonight. Emily didn't know what exactly, but she could feel it in her bones. Finding that baby wasn't just chance. It was the beginning of something that would change everything she thought she knew about herself. The sun was starting to rise as she finally pulled into her apartment building parking lot. A new day was beginning. And somewhere in that hospital, a baby girl was alive because Emily had listened to that cry in the darkness. She touched her phone, looking at Linda's card. Tomorrow she would call. Tomorrow she would start asking questions. But tonight, she just needed to process what had happened and try to understand why she felt so deeply connected to a child she'd only just met. Emily barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the baby's face, heard those desperate cries echoing in the dark alley. By 7 in the morning, she gave up trying to rest and made herself coffee, sitting at her kitchen table with Detective Linda Morrison's card in front of her. She wanted to call right away, but she forced herself to wait until 9. Even then, her hands were shaking as she dialed the number. "Morrison," the detective answered on the second ring. "Hi, this is Emily Martinez. From last night, I found the baby." "Emily, hello. I was actually going to call you today. Can you come down to the station? There's something I'd like to show you." An hour later, Emily sat across from Linda in a small office at the police station. The detective looked tired, like maybe she hadn't slept much either. I did some digging last night after you left, Linda said, pulling out a file folder. That locket you found with the baby. I wanted to see if I could track down more information about the theft report from 30 years ago. She opened the folder and pulled out an old photograph, faded and slightly yellowed with age. It showed the locket, the same one from the alley, opened up to reveal a tiny picture inside. Emily leaned forward to look closer, and her breath caught in her throat. The woman in the photograph looked exactly like her. Not similar. Not kind of like her. It could have been Emily's own face staring back at her from that old picture. The same dark hair, the same shaped eyes, the same small mole on the left cheek. Emily couldn't finish the sentence. Her mind was racing too fast. That's Rosa Delgado, Linda said quietly. The woman who reported the locket stolen in 1995. She was 19 years old when this photo was taken. Emily's hand went to her own cheek, touching the mole that she'd always thought made her unique. I don't understand. I know this must be shocking, but there's more. Linda pulled out another document. After I saw this photo, I started looking into other cases from that time period. Emily, you were found abandoned in a hospital parking lot in October of 1995. You were approximately 3 weeks old. The hospital was less than 3 miles from where you found the baby last night. The room felt like it was spinning. Emily gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. You think Rosa is my birth mother? I think it's a strong possibility. The resemblance is remarkable. The timing matches, and the location. But there's only one way to know for sure. DNA test, Emily whispered. Linda nodded. I'd like to test both you and the baby. Standard procedure would just be testing the baby to try to find family through the database. But given these circumstances, if you're willing, I think we should test you too. Emily's adoptive parents had always been honest with her about being adopted. They'd told her that if she ever wanted to search for her birth family, they would support her completely. But Emily had never felt ready. The idea of rejection, of finding out she wasn't wanted, had always been too scary. Now the choice was being made for her. Yes, she said. Yes, I want to know. The DNA testing was quick, just a swab on the inside of her cheek. But the waiting was torture. Linda said it would take at least a week, maybe 2, to get results back. In the meantime, the baby remained in the hospital under observation, and Emily couldn't stop thinking about her. She went to visit 3 times in the first week. The nurses recognized her and let her hold the infant, who was gaining weight and getting stronger every day. Someone had to give her a name for the hospital records, and since no family had come forward, they'd temporarily called her Baby Jane. It felt wrong somehow, too impersonal for this little fighter. I'm going to call you Sophia, Emily whispered during one visit, holding the baby close. Just between us. Sophia means wisdom, and I think you're going to need to be wise and strong. At night, Emily researched everything she could find about Rosa Delgado. It wasn't much. According to old records Linda had shared, Rosa had lived in the 5th Street area in the mid-1990s. She'd filed the police report about the stolen locket in October 1995, the same month Emily had been found. Then Rosa seemed to disappear from the records for several years. Emily found a marriage certificate from 2001. Rosa had married a man named Carlos Vega. Then there were property records showing they'd moved to an apartment across town. After that, the trail went cold. Who are you? Emily whispered to the computer screen, staring at the few details of Rosa's life. And why did you leave me? On day 9, Linda called. The DNA results are back. Can you come to the station? Emily's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe as she drove downtown. This was it. This was the moment she'd find out if her whole life story was about to change. Linda's expression was serious when Emily walked into her office. She gestured to a chair and Emily sat down, her legs feeling weak. I'm just going to say it straight, Linda said. The baby is your niece. She's your biological niece, the words hung in the air. Emily heard them but couldn't quite process what they meant. My niece. But that means... It means you have a sibling, a sister. And yes, we found a match in the database for Rosa Delgado. Emily, Rosa is your biological mother. Emily put her face in her hands. 32 years. For 32 years, she'd wondered. And now, just like that, she had answers. She had a mother, a sister. A niece, where is she? Emily asked, her voice muffled. Where's Rosa? Linda's expression softened with sympathy. She's alive. She's living in a nursing home on the east side of the city. She's only 68, but she has advanced arthritis and some other health problems. She's been there for about 2 years. And my sister? That's more complicated. Your sister's name is Carmen. She's 30 years old. And Emily, she's currently in a rehabilitation facility. She's been struggling with addiction for several years. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they formed was heartbreaking. Carmen had left her baby in that alley, just like Rosa had left Emily all those years ago. History repeating itself in the cruelest way. Does Rosa know? Emily asked. About the baby? About me? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. This is your story, your family. You get to decide how and when this information is shared. Emily stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there was her mother, a woman she'd never met but who had given birth to her. A woman who had made an impossible choice 30 years ago and had been living with it ever since. Tell me about Carmen, Emily said. Linda flipped through her notes. She's been in and out of rehab 3 times. Arrested twice for possession, lost her job about 6 months ago. From what we've learned, she was living in her car when she gave birth. We think she panicked. She was scared and alone. And she did what her own mother had done. She left the baby hoping someone would find her and give her a better life, just like Rosa did with me. Yes, Emily turned back to face Linda. I want to meet her, Rosa. I want to meet my mother. Are you sure? This is a lot to process. You might want to take some time. I've had 32 years, Emily said. I don't want to wait anymore. Linda made a phone call, and within an hour, arrangements were made. The nursing home administrator was understanding but cautious. Rosa's health was fragile and shock could be dangerous. They needed to prepare her carefully for this meeting. I spoke with Rosa's social worker, Linda said after hanging up. She's going to talk to Rosa this afternoon, explain the situation gently. If Rosa is willing to meet you, we can arrange something for tomorrow. Emily drove home in a daze. She called her adoptive parents, who she still called Mom and Dad and always would. They'd raised her, loved her, made her who she was. This new information didn't change that. Her mother cried on the phone. Oh, honey, this is huge. How are you feeling? I don't know, Emily admitted. Scared, excited, confused, everything all at once. Do you want us to come with you? When you meet her? No, I think I need to do this alone. But thank you. For everything. For being my parents. Always. Her mom said firmly. You're our daughter. Nothing changes that. That night, Emily couldn't eat. She stood in front of her mirror for a long time, looking at her face with new eyes. This was Rosa's face, too. These were Rosa's eyes. Somewhere in her body was DNA that had come from a woman she'd never met. A woman who had carried her for 9 months and then let her go. Why did you do it? Emily thought. What happened that made you think you had no choice? Her phone rang at 8 p.m. It was Linda. Rosa agreed to meet you. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Sunny Acres Nursing Home. Her social worker will be there, and so will I if you want me to be. Please, Emily said. I'd like you there. After hanging up, Emily sat on her couch and let herself cry. For the baby she'd been. Left alone in a parking lot. For Rosa, who'd had to make an impossible choice. For Carmen, struggling with demons Emily couldn't imagine. For Sophia, the tiny baby fighting to survive in the hospital nursery. For all of them, connected by blood and circumstance and choices made in moments of desperation. Tomorrow, she would meet her mother. Tomorrow, her life would change again. But tonight, she mourned for all the lost years. All the missed moments, all the what-ifs that could never be answered. She looked at the business card Linda had given her with Sophia's hospital room number written on the back. Her niece, her family, the baby she'd saved had given her something she'd been searching for her whole life. Thank you, Emily whispered. Thank you for crying out in that alley. Thank you for helping me find where I came from. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled in the darkness, and somewhere out there, Rosa was lying awake too. Probably thinking about the daughter she'd lost and the granddaughter who'd been abandoned. Thinking about tomorrow, when the past and present would finally meet. Emily changed her outfit 3 times before leaving for Sunny Acres Nursing Home. Nothing felt right. What do you wear to meet the mother who gave birth to you but never raised you? How do you dress for a meeting that's been 32 years in the making? She finally settled on jeans and a simple blue sweater, something that felt like herself rather than like she was trying too hard. but her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she drove across town. Detective Linda Morrison was waiting in the parking lot when Emily arrived. She gave Emily a reassuring smile and walked with her to the entrance. "How are you holding up?" Linda asked. "I think I'm going to be sick," Emily admitted. "Is that normal?" "Completely normal. What you're about to do takes incredible courage." The nursing home smelled like cleaning products and overcooked vegetables. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow that somehow made everything feel sadder. An older man in a wheelchair nodded at them as they passed. A nurse rushed by with a medication cart. Emily's heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. They met Rosa's social worker, Teresa, at the nurse's station. She was a round woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Rosa's been asking about you all morning," Teresa said. "She's nervous too, if that helps. But she's very much wants to meet you." "How did she react?" Emily asked. "When you told her?" Teresa's expression was complicated. "She cried for about an hour. Then she asked to see that locket, the one you found with the baby. When we showed her a photo of it, she said she'd known all along that someday the truth would come out. She said she'd been waiting for this day for 32 years. They walked down a long hallway, past rooms where elderly residents watched television or slept in their beds. Emily tried to prepare herself, but how do you prepare for something like this? Teresa stopped at room 217. The door was partially open. "Take your time," she said softly. "There's no rush. I'll be right here if you need anything." Emily took a deep breath and walked through the door. The room was small but clean, with a window overlooking a courtyard. There was a dresser with a few photographs on it, a television mounted on the wall, and a bed. Next to the bed sat a woman in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. Rosa. She was smaller than Emily had imagined, thin and frail-looking. Her dark hair was streaked with gray and pulled back in a bun. Her face was lined with wrinkles, the kind that come from hard years and harder choices. But her eyes were the same as Emily's. Exactly the same. Those eyes filled with tears the moment Emily walked in. "Dios mío," Rosa whispered. My baby girl." Emily's vision blurred. She tried to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there, frozen, looking at the woman who had given her life. Rosa lifted one shaking hand toward her. "Please come closer. Let me see you." Emily's feet moved on their own. She crossed the small room and stood in front of her mother. Up close, she could see that Rosa's hands were twisted with arthritis, her knuckles swollen and bent. She could see the way Rosa was trying not to cry, trying to be strong. "You're so beautiful," Rosa said, her voice breaking. "I knew you would be. I dreamed about you every night for 32 years. I wondered what you looked like, if you were happy, if you were safe." "I was safe," Emily managed to say. "My parents, my adoptive parents, they loved me. They gave me a good life. Thank God," Rosa whispered. "Thank God. That's all I ever wanted. For you to have the life I couldn't give you." Emily pulled a chair close to the wheelchair and sat down. Now that she was here, now that this moment was real, she had so many questions she didn't know where to start. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did you leave me?" Rosa closed her eyes and tears spilled down her cheeks. When she spoke, her voice was thick with pain and regret. "I was 17 years old. Just 17. Your father, Antonio, he was a good man. We loved each other. We were going to get married." She paused, struggling with the memories. "He died in a construction accident 3 weeks before you were born. Fell from a scaffold. He never even knew about you." Emily felt her throat tighten. She'd never known anything about her biological father. How she knew he'd died before she was even born. "I had no money," Rosa continued. "No family support. My parents, they were very strict, very religious. When they found out I was pregnant, they threw me out. Said I brought shame to the family. I was living in a shelter, working at a laundromat for minimum wage. I could barely feed myself." She looked down at her twisted hands. "When you were born, I held you for 3 days. 3 days at the hospital. You were so perfect, so tiny and perfect, and I knew I couldn't give you what you needed. I couldn't give you food or a safe place to live or a future. All I had was love, and love wasn't enough. So you left me at the hospital," Emily said quietly. "I left you where I knew someone would find you right away, where doctors and nurses would take care of you. I wrapped you in the only baby blanket I had, and I walked away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. "I died that day. Part of me died when I walked away from you." Emily wiped her own eyes. This wasn't the story she'd imagined. She'd always thought maybe her birth mother just didn't want her, didn't care. But this was different. This was love expressed through the most painful sacrifice. "The locket," Emily said. "Why did you report it stolen?" Rosa's expression changed, becoming almost guilty. "I didn't want to report it at all. That locket was my mother's, the only thing of value I had left. I wanted you to have it. I tucked it into your blanket before I left you." "But then why?" "Because I was scared," Rosa admitted. "A week after I left you, I panicked. I thought, what if someone traces the locket back to me? What if they find me and force me to take you back when I have nothing to offer? So I reported it stolen, to cover my tracks, to make sure you could stay safe with whoever adopted you." It was twisted logic born from fear and desperation. Emily could see that now. Rosa hadn't been thinking clearly. She'd been a traumatized teenager trying to protect the baby she'd given up. "What happened after?" Emily asked. "What happened to your life?" Rosa took a shaky breath. "I worked. I survived. For years, I just existed. I couldn't forgive myself. I went to church every Sunday and prayed for you. Asked God to keep you safe, to help you be happy." She paused. "When I was 24, I met Carlos. He was kind to me, patient. I told him about you, about what I'd done. He didn't judge me. We got married. And then we had Carmen, Emily's sister. I tried to be a good mother to Carmen," Rosa said, her voice filled with guilt. "I tried so hard, but I was broken inside. The depression, the guilt, it never went away. I wasn't the mother she needed. And Carlos, he tried his best, but he worked 3 jobs to support us. Carmen grew up with parents who were always tired, always struggling." "Where is she now?" Emily asked. "The rehabilitation center on Oak Street. She's been there for 3 weeks this time, the longest she's stayed clean in years." Rosa's eyes filled with fresh tears. "When they told me about the baby, about what Carmen did, I couldn't believe it. History repeating itself. My daughter did the same thing I did, abandoned her baby in the same neighborhood where I used to live. She left the locket with her," Emily said. Rosa nodded. "I'd given it to Carmen on her 16th birthday. Told her it had belonged to her grandmother. I never told her the whole truth about it, about you. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe if I'd been honest, things would have been different." They sat in silence for a moment. The weight of all these years, all these secrets hung heavy in the air. "Can I ask you something?" Rosa said quietly. "Are you angry with me?" Emily thought about it. Was she angry? She'd felt angry sometimes over the years. Angry at the unknown woman who had given birth to her and then disappeared. But now, looking at Rosa's pain-filled eyes, seeing the arthritis that had twisted her hands, knowing the poverty and fear that had shaped her choice, Emily found she wasn't angry at all. "No," she said. "I'm not angry. I'm sad. Sad for you, sad for what you went through, sad for all the years we lost. I never stopped thinking about you," Rosa said. "Every birthday I wondered where you were, what you looked like, if you were happy. I used to go to the park and watch little girls play, wondering if one of them might be you." Emily reached out and carefully took Rosa's twisted hand in hers. "I'm here now. We can't get back those years, but we have now." Rosa squeezed her hand as hard as her arthritis would allow. "Tell me about your life, please. I want to know everything." So Emily talked. She told Rosa about her adoptive parents, about growing up in a loving home, about deciding to become a nurse, about working night shifts at the hospital. She talked about her apartment, her friends, the small details of an ordinary life that suddenly felt extraordinary because she was finally sharing it with her birth mother. Rosa listened to every word, her eyes never leaving Emily's face. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she cried, but mostly she just looked grateful, like someone who'd been given an unexpected gift. "You saved Carmen's baby," Rosa said when Emily finished talking. "You saved your own niece. God works in mysterious ways. I want to help," Emily said. "With Sophia, with Carmen. I want to be part of this family, whatever that means." "Sophia?" Rosa asked. "That's what I've been calling the baby. It means wisdom." Rosa smiled through her tears. "It's perfect. You're perfect. You turned out perfect despite everything I did wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong," Emily said firmly. "You did what you thought was best with impossible choices. You were just a kid yourself." They talked for 2 more hours. Teresa brought them tea and quietly left them alone. Detective Linda checked in once, but mostly stayed in the hallway, giving them privacy. When it was finally time to go, Rosa didn't want to let go of Emily's hand. "You'll come back?" she asked, and Emily could hear the fear in her voice. Fear that this was just a dream, that Emily would disappear again. "I'll come back," Emily promised. "I'll come back as often as you want. You're my mother. We've lost too much time already." Rosa pulled Emily down into an awkward hug, her bent hands patting Emily's back. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not hating me. Thank you for being here." As Emily left the nursing home, her emotions were overwhelming. She felt exhausted, relieved, sad, and hopeful all at once. She'd finally met her mother. She'd finally gotten answers to questions she'd carried her whole life. But there was still more of this story to unfold. There was still Carmen struggling in rehab. There was still baby Sophia waiting in the hospital. There was still a family to piece together from broken parts. Emily sat in her car for a long time before starting the engine. Through the window of Rosa's room, she could see her mother's silhouette. Rosa was looking out at the courtyard, and Emily wondered what she was thinking. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Emily thought about all the sunsets Rosa had watched alone, carrying the secret of the daughter she'd given away. All those years of guilt and wondering, those years were over now. They'd found each other, and somehow, impossibly, they were going to figure out how to be a family. 3 days after meeting Rosa, Emily stood outside the Oak Street Rehabilitation Center, trying to gather her courage. Meeting her mother had been overwhelming, but this felt even more complicated. Carmen was her sister, her younger sister, and Carmen had abandoned baby Sophia in that alley. Emily had spent those 3 days visiting both Rosa and Sophia, building a relationship with her mother while getting more attached to her niece. The baby was thriving now, gaining weight and strength, but Child Services was starting to talk about foster placement. Sophia needed a permanent home, and Carmen was in no position to provide one. Detective Linda had arranged this meeting with Carmen's counselor. Carmen knew Emily was coming. She knew the whole story now. About Emily being her sister, about Sophia being found, about the locket and Rosa and everything. How she'd reacted to that news, Emily didn't know yet. The rehabilitation center looked more like a regular building than Emily had expected. Clean, modern, with motivational posters on the walls about hope and recovery. A counselor named David met her in the lobby. "Carmen's been doing really well," he told Emily as they walked down a hallway. "This is her 4th time in rehab, but something's different this time. She's actually engaging with the program. I think finding out about you, about having family, that's given her something to fight for." "How much does she know about me?" "Everything we know. That you were adopted, that you're a nurse, that you found her daughter. She's been asking to meet you since she heard." David paused outside a door. "Just remember, addiction is a disease. Carmen made a terrible choice leaving that baby, but she's sick. She's trying to get better." Emily nodded, though her stomach was in knots. They entered a common room where several people sat in groups, talking or working on puzzles. In a corner by the window sat a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was thin, too thin, with dark circles under her eyes. But even from across the room, Emily could see the resemblance. Carmen had Rosa's eyes. Their eyes. Carmen looked up and saw Emily. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Carmen stood up slowly, her hands shaking. "You're real," Carmen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Part of me thought maybe I imagined all of this. Like some kind of withdrawal hallucination." Emily walked closer. Up close, she could see how young Carmen looked despite being 30. There was something fragile about her, like she might break at any moment. "I'm real," Emily said. "And you're my sister." Carmen's eyes filled with tears. "I have a sister. I have a sister, and I never knew. Mom never told me. She was trying to protect you. To protect both of us, I think. Can we sit?" Carmen asked, gesturing to the chairs by the window. Her hands were still shaking. Emily wondered if that was from withdrawal or just nerves. They sat down across from each other. For a moment, neither of them knew what to say. There was so much history between them, but they were also strangers. "I visited Sophia yesterday," Emily finally said. "She's beautiful. She's getting stronger every day." Carmen's face crumpled. "I know I don't deserve to ask. I know what I did was horrible. But is she okay?" "Really okay? She's going to be fine. You left her somewhere she'd be found. That was brave in a way. Brave." Carmen laughed bitterly. "I abandoned my baby in an alley. There's nothing brave about that. You could have left her somewhere worse. You could have done nothing. But you made sure someone would hear her crying. You left the locket so she'd have something of her grandmother's. You were trying to give her a chance. Carmen wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was living in my car. High half the time. I gave birth in a parking lot. I didn't even know I was in labor until it was too late. No hospital, no doctor, just me and the baby, and I had no idea what to do. Emily's heart ached listening to this. She was a nurse. She knew how dangerous what Carmen described was. How easily both she and the baby could have died. I looked at her. Carmen continued, her voice breaking. This tiny, perfect thing, and I knew I was going to kill her if I kept her. I could barely take care of myself. How was I supposed to take care of a baby? So I did what Mom did. I left her somewhere safe and I walked away. You didn't know Rosa had done the same thing. Not until they told me here. After they found me and brought me to rehab. Carmen shook her head. Mom never talked about her past. She was always so sad, you know? Always carrying around this weight. Now I understand why. She was carrying the same guilt I'm carrying. She doesn't blame you, Emily said. She blames herself. She thinks if she'd been a better mother, you wouldn't have struggled so much. That's not fair. None of this is her fault. Carmen looked out of the window. I started using when I was 16. Pills at first. Then harder stuff. Mom and Dad tried everything. Therapy, different schools, tough love, soft love. Nothing worked. By the time I was 20, I was in and out of jail. Dad died 3 years ago. Heart attack from all the stress. Mom's health got worse after that. I'm sorry, Emily said. About your dad. Our dad? Carmen looked back at her. It's weird, right? You saying our dad when you never met him. You have a whole different family. Different parents who raised you. This must all be so strange for you. It is strange, Emily admitted. But they're still my parents, the ones who raised me. And Rosa is still my mother. And you're still my sister. Family is complicated. Do you hate me? Carmen asked suddenly. For what I did to Sophia? For being such a mess. Emily thought about how to answer that. Did she hate Carmen? No. She was angry about Sophia being left in that alley, terrified about what could have happened. But looking at her sister now, seeing the pain and regret in her eyes, Emily couldn't find it in herself to hate her. I don't hate you. I'm angry about Sophia being abandoned. But I also understand that you were desperate and scared and sick. Addiction is a disease. You need help, not hate. Carmen started crying harder. I don't deserve a sister like you. I don't deserve any of this. Stop, Emily said firmly. Stop saying you don't deserve things. You deserve a chance to get better. You deserve to heal. And Sophia deserves to know her mother someday when you're ready. You think I can get better? I think you can try. And I think having family who cares about you might help. They talked for over an hour. Carmen told Emily about her struggles, about the cycle of getting clean and relapsing, about the job she'd lost, the relationships that had fallen apart, about getting pregnant and trying to stay sober for the baby but failing. I stayed clean for almost 4 months, Carmen said. The longest I'd been clean in years. But then Dad died and I fell apart. Started using again. By the time I realized I was pregnant, it was too late to do anything about it. So I tried to quit. I really tried. Made it to 7 months pregnant before I relapsed. Emily listened without judgment. This was her sister's truth, painful and raw. After I left Sophia in that alley, I just wanted to die. Carmen continued. I drove around for hours thinking about crashing my car or taking every pill I had left. But then the police found me. Someone had seen me leaving the alley and got my license plate. They brought me here instead of jail. Gave me one more chance, and you're taking it, Emily said. You're still here. You're still fighting. Because of you, Carmen said. When they told me about you, about having a sister who found Sophia, who saved her life, I thought maybe this was a sign. Maybe this was the universe telling me I still had a reason to live. Emily reached across and took Carmen's hand. You have lots of reasons to live. You have a daughter who needs you to get better. You have a mother who loves you. And you have a sister now who wants to help. Why? Carmen asked. Why would you want to help me? You don't know me. Because you're my sister. Because family shows up for each other. And because I know what it's like to feel alone. Carmen squeezed her hand. Tell me about Sophia, please. I haven't seen her since the night she was born. So Emily pulled out her phone and showed Carmen pictures she'd taken at the hospital. Sophia sleeping. Sophia awake with her eyes trying to focus. Sophia being held by one of the nurses. Carmen looked at each photo like it was the most precious thing she'd ever seen. "She has my nose," Carmen said with a small laugh. "And Mom's eyes. She's perfect," Emily said. "And she's strong. She's a fighter just like her mom is trying to be." "Can I see her?" Carmen asked. "I know I probably can't, but can I at least see her?" Emily had already asked about this. "Your counselor said if you continue doing well, we can arrange a supervised visit in a few weeks. Just to see her. You won't be able to take her or anything, but you can see that she's okay." Carmen nodded, wiping her eyes. "A few weeks. I can do a few weeks. I can stay clean for a few weeks." "You can stay clean longer than that," Emily said. "One day at a time, right?" "That's what they say." "One day at a time," Carmen repeated. David, the counselor, knocked on the doorframe. "Sorry, ladies, but we need to wrap up. Group session starts in 10 minutes. Emily stood up, and Carmen did too. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Carmen stepped forward and hugged her. It was awkward and tentative, but it was real. "Thank you," Carmen whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me before you even met me." "I'm your sister," Emily said. "I'm not going anywhere." As Emily drove away from the rehabilitation center, she felt emotionally exhausted but also hopeful. Carmen had a long road ahead of her. Addiction wasn't something that got fixed in a few weeks or even a few months. There would be setbacks. There might be more relapses. But for the first time, Carmen had something she hadn't had before. Family. Real family who knew her story and cared about her anyway. Emily stopped at the hospital on her way home. She needed to see Sophia, to hold her and remember why all of this mattered. The baby was awake when Emily arrived, her dark eyes looking around with infant curiosity. "Hi, sweet girl," Emily said, picking her up carefully. "I met your mama today. She loves you so much. She's trying really hard to get better so she can be the mom you deserve." Sophia made a little cooing sound, and Emily felt her heart swell with love for this tiny person who had changed everything. "You know what?" Emily said softly. "I think we're going to be okay, all of us. It's going to be hard and messy and complicated, but we're going to be a family. Somehow we're going to figure out how to be a family." A nurse passed by and smiled at them. "You're so good with her. She's lucky to have you." Emily looked down at Sophia's face, then thought about Rosa in her nursing home room and Carmen in rehab. 3 generations of women all connected by tragedy and choice and unexpected grace. "I'm the lucky one," Emily said. "I'm the lucky one." 6 months had passed since that October night when Emily found a crying baby in an alley. 6 months that had completely transformed her life in ways she never could have imagined. Today was special. Today was Sophia's first birthday, though they were celebrating a few weeks early since the exact date of her birth wasn't known. Emily had been planning this small party for weeks, wanting everything to be perfect. She stood in her apartment looking at the decorations she'd hung up, pink and white balloons, a small banner that said "Happy Birthday, Sophia," and a tiny cake from the bakery down the street. It wasn't fancy, but it was filled with love. The adoption papers had been finalized 3 months ago. Emily was officially Sophia's mother now. It had been a long process, filled with home visits and interviews and background checks. But Emily had never wavered. From the moment she'd held that baby in the alley, some part of her had known they were meant to be together. A knock on the door made her smile. Right on time. She opened it to find Rosa in her wheelchair, pushed by a home health aide Emily had hired. Rosa looked better than she had 6 months ago. Emily had moved her to a nicer facility, one with better care and more activities. Rosa's health would never be perfect, but she was more comfortable now, more at peace. "Mija," Rosa said, using the Spanish term of endearment she'd started calling Emily. "The place looks beautiful." Come in," Emily said, helping the aide maneuver the wheelchair through the doorway. "Sophia's still napping, but she should wake up soon." Rosa had seen Sophia several times over the past months, always lighting up when she held her granddaughter. There was healing happening for Rosa too, Emily had noticed. Being part of Sophia's life was helping her forgive herself for the choices she'd made all those years ago. Another knock came 15 minutes later. Emily's heart beat a little faster as she went to answer it. This was the moment she'd been most nervous about. Carmen stood in the hallway and Emily barely recognized her. Her sister had gained healthy weight, her skin had color in it again, and her eyes were clear. She'd been sober for 5 months now, the longest stretch since she was a teenager. She was living in a sober house and working part-time at a grocery store. "Hi," Carmen said, suddenly looking shy. "I brought a gift. I hope that's okay." "Of course it's okay. Come in." Carmen walked in slowly, clutching a wrapped package. When she saw Rosa, she went over and kissed her mother's cheek. "Hi, Mom." "Mi amor," Rosa said, touching Carmen's face gently. "You look so good." Emily watched them together, still getting used to the dynamic. She was part of this family now, but sometimes she felt like an outsider looking in. Rosa and Carmen had 30 years of history. Emily was still catching up, but then Carmen turned to her and smiled, a real genuine smile, and Emily felt included. They were working on it, building something new together. "Can I see her?" Carmen asked quietly. "Is she awake yet?" "Let me check." Emily went to the nursery she'd set up in her second bedroom. Sophia was just starting to stir, making the little sounds that meant she'd be fully awake soon. Emily picked her up, changed her diaper, and brought her out to the living room. Carmen's face transformed when she saw Sophia, pure love mixed with pain and regret and hope all at once. "She's gotten so big," Carmen whispered. Over the past months, Carmen had been allowed supervised visits with Sophia. At first, just an hour at a time at the rehabilitation center. Then, as she proved her sobriety was stable, longer visits. Emily had watched Carmen interact with her daughter, seeing how gentle and attentive she was. How much she loved this little girl. It had been hard sometimes, Emily had to admit. There were moments when she felt territorial, when she wanted to say, "This is my daughter now." But she reminded herself that biology didn't erase love. Sophia could have two mothers. Carmen would always be the woman who gave birth to her, and Emily would be the one raising her. Both could be true at the same time. "Do you want to hold her?" Emily asked. Carmen nodded, taking Sophia carefully in her arms. The baby looked up at her with curious eyes. Sophia was starting to recognize people now, and she'd seen Carmen enough times to not be scared. Rosa watched them with tears streaming down her face. "3 generations," she said softly. "My daughter, my granddaughter, my great-granddaughter. All together. 4 generations," Emily corrected gently. "I'm your daughter too," Rosa smiled through her tears. 4 generations. I never thought I'd see this day. Emily had also invited her adoptive parents, who arrived shortly after with more gifts and enthusiasm. They'd been wonderful about everything, welcoming Rosa and Carmen as extended family. There had been some awkward moments at first, everyone trying to figure out how to navigate this unusual situation. But love was bigger than awkwardness. "Where should we put these presents?" Emily's dad asked, carrying in a large bag. "Dad, you didn't have to get so much." "She's our granddaughter too," her mom said firmly. "We spoil our grandkids. That's the rule." Emily felt her heart swell. Sophia was so loved. By Emily, by Carmen, by Rosa, by Emily's adoptive parents. This little girl who had been abandoned in an alley now had more family than most kids ever got. They sang happy birthday around the small cake. Sophia didn't understand what was happening, but she clapped her hands and laughed at the candles. Carmen helped her blow them out, tears running down her face the whole time. "Make a wish," Rosa said. "For Sophia's future." Emily closed her eyes. She wished for Sophia to always feel loved, to always know she was wanted, to grow up healthy and happy and free from the struggles that had haunted both Rosa and Carmen. When she opened her eyes, she caught Carmen looking at her. Her sister mouthed "thank you," and Emily nodded. They'd had a lot of conversations about the adoption, about what it meant. Carmen had signed the papers willingly, knowing she wasn't ready to be a full-time mother. But she was still part of Sophia's life, and that was important. "I want her to know me," Carmen had said during one of their talks. "Not as her mom, not in that way, but as someone who loves her, someone who will always be there for her."